Have you ever heard someone say they saw a bright light at the end of a tunnel, floated above their body, or met long-lost loved ones during a medical emergency? Stories of near-death experiences, or NDEs, are some of the most mysterious and emotional tales people share. They're not just dramatic, they're life-changing. But what if I told you there's more science and psychology behind these moments than we think? In today's video, we're diving into the science of near-death experiences, not just what happens, but what it means for our understanding of consciousness, the brain, and even the soul. Stick around because the ending might shift how you see your own life. Let's start with the basics. A near-death experience usually occurs when someone is on the edge of death or has technically died and been revived. These experiences often include feeling peace or detachment from the body, seeing a bright light or tunnel, reviewing their life like a movie, meeting spiritual beings or deceased relatives. These moments can happen during cardiac arrests, serious accidents, or even intense trauma. What's fascinating is that across cultures and religions, many of the core elements are the same. But why? Is it proof of the soul? Or is something happening in the brain? Psychologists believe the mind plays a major role during these extreme events. When we face death, the brain might create powerful visuals and emotions as a coping mechanism. It's like the mind's way of softening the blow. For example, the life review. That could be memory centers in the brain firing rapidly. The feeling of floating? That might be the result of disrupted spatial awareness due to reduced oxygen. This doesn't mean the experience isn't real to the person. It absolutely is. But from a psychological standpoint, it may be the brain's last-ditch effort to process what's happening. And then there is neuroscience, and here's where things get fascinating. Brain scans of people who've gone through NDEs show activity in areas linked to memory, emotion, and perception, even when they were clinically dead. Some researchers suggest that the brain, in a last burst of energy before shutting down, creates vivid experiences. One study published in PNAS found that in rats, brain activity actually increased just before death. This could suggest a surge in consciousness, not a fading of it. So maybe the brain doesn't just fade to black, maybe it puts on one final show. Now let's talk about the patterns, the strange, almost universal themes people describe during near-death experiences. What's fascinating is that these stories come from people of different ages, religions, cultures, and medical backgrounds. And yet, the core elements are often surprisingly similar. 1. The out-of-body experience, OBE. One of the most common elements is the sense of leaving one's body. People describe watching medical teams work on them, floating above their hospital beds, or moving through the room from a different vantage point. Psychologically, this can be understood as dissociation, a mental response to extreme trauma or stress. It's the brain's way of protecting you by separating you from physical or emotional pain. But it can also reflect something deeper, a temporary shift in identity where the self is no longer limited to the body. 2. The tunnel and the light. Many people describe moving through a tunnel toward a bright, comforting light. The light often feels like pure love, peace, or even the presence of a higher power. From a neurological perspective, researchers suggest that the tunnel might be linked to changes in vision. As blood and oxygen leave the brain, the peripheral vision fades first, creating a tunnel-like effect. The light? Some suggest it could be the stimulation of the visual cortex as the brain shuts down. But again, psychologically, this experience might reflect a yearning for safety, warmth, and connection, especially in a moment when a person is closest to death. It's the brain's poetic way of saying, you're not alone. 3. The life review. Another common thread, the life review. People report seeing moments from their lives, sometimes the good, sometimes the bad, play out like a movie. But more than that, they often feel what others felt during those moments. They experience empathy in a profound way. This is fascinating from a psychological lens. It speaks to our brain's ability for integrative processing, bringing unresolved memories, emotions, and relationships to the surface when we're close to death. Some psychologists believe this might be the mind's last effort to find meaning, resolution, or even forgiveness. 4th, meeting beings or deceased loved ones. People also report encounters with spiritual beings, angels or loved ones who have passed. These figures are often perceived as guides, comforting the person or encouraging them to return. Now, skeptics might say these are hallucinations, influenced by cultural or religious beliefs, and that's possible. But psychologically, they may represent archetypes, deep symbolic figures that emerge from the unconscious to offer safety and guidance. Carl Jung would call these wise figures, showing up in moments of deep transformation. 5. The choice to return. Many NDEs end with a choice, either to continue onward or return to life. In some stories, people are told their time hasn't come yet. Others feel they're given a real decision. From a psychological point of view, this could reflect a turning point in the psyche, the moment when survival becomes possible again, when the mind and body are ready to re-engage with life. It's not just about living or dying, it's about finding a renewed sense of purpose. So what do all these themes tell us? They suggest that NDEs aren't just random brain glitches or spiritual fairy tales. They reflect powerful psychological truths about our need for connection, our capacity for empathy, our search for meaning, and the mind's ability to protect, guide, and heal itself, even at the edge of death. These experiences can't be reduced to just science or just spirit. They live in the in-between, and that's exactly why they're worth paying attention to. So why should we care? Why do near-death experiences matter beyond just being a curious phenomenon? Because underneath all the science and speculation, NDEs touch on something deeply personal: our relationship with mortality, with meaning, and with the mystery of being alive. First, NDEs challenge our assumptions about consciousness. If people report awareness while the brain is supposedly offline, it pushes us to reconsider what the mind really is. Are we just our brains? Or is consciousness more than a biological process? Whether you're spiritual, skeptical, or somewhere in between, these questions matter because they force us to look at life and death with fresh eyes. Second, NDEs impact mental health and healing. Many people who go through them report permanent changes. They become less afraid of death, more compassionate, and more connected to others. Even if we don't experience an NDE ourselves, the stories can encourage us to think differently about how we live and how we relate to others. That matters for our relationships, our values, and even how we handle stress. Third, it opens up a middle path between science and spirituality. You don't have to pick a side. NDE research is one of those rare fields where neuroscience, psychology, and spirituality are sitting at the same table, each offering a piece of the puzzle. And for many people, that's comforting. It means you can be curious without having to abandon reason or faith. And finally, NDEs remind us that not everything can be fully explained, at least not yet. And maybe that's a good thing. In a world obsessed with certainty and control, NDEs invite us to be a little more open, a little more humble, and a little more connected to the mystery of life itself. Lastly, let's talk about the tension that always seems to show up when near-death experiences are mentioned: science versus spirituality. Some people see NDEs as proof of an afterlife, evidence that our souls live on after death. Others argue that these are simply biological and neurological events happening in a brain under extreme stress. And for decades, both sides have debated, sometimes fiercely, about which one is right. But here's the thing. Maybe this isn't about choosing one side. Science offers us tools to explore the brain, study patterns, and understand how consciousness might react when life is on the edge. It explains how oxygen loss, neurotransmitters, and brain chemistry can produce vivid hallucinations or profound feelings. Spirituality, on the other hand, explores the meaning behind those experiences. It asks deeper questions. Why do so many people feel transformed? Why do they come back with a renewed sense of purpose, love, and peace? Whether or not you believe in an afterlife, those emotional and psychological shifts are very real and very human. From a psychological perspective, this debate reveals more about how we process the unknown than it does about who's right. Humans naturally seek stories that help us make sense of life and death. For some, that story is scientific. For others, it's spiritual. And for many, it's both. The most interesting space might actually be in the middle, where neuroscience meets meaning, and where inner experience is treated with both respect and curiosity. Maybe the point isn't to prove what NDEs are. Maybe the point is to understand what they do to our minds, our identities, and the way we live after. So what can we take away from all this? Near-death experiences remind us that the mind is more powerful than we know. Death, while inevitable, may not be the end of meaning. Every moment of life is an opportunity for depth, change, and connection. Whether you believe in the soul, the science, or something in between, NDEs ask us to consider what matters most while we're still here. If you've made it this far, thank you. That tells me you're curious, open, and willing to explore the edges of what we know. And that's exactly the kind of mindset that changes lives. If this video made you think or even feel a little emotional, give it a thumbs up. Share your thoughts or stories in the comments. We'd love to hear them. And remember to subscribe for more videos that dive deep into psychology, spirituality, and everything in between. See you in the next video, and remember, sometimes the biggest answers come from the deepest questions.